So why is it not the case that Russia is Nazi Germany in this scenario?
The diagnosis of the Trump administration, and it's one that I share, is that what we have here is closer to a World War I problem than a World War II problem. World War I happened not because some aggressive dictator decided he was going to take over Europe. It happened because there was an escalatory spiral in which all of the players involved thought they were taking prudent defensive steps to secure their own situations. And those defensive steps led to an escalatory spiral, an action-reaction spiral in which states got drawn into a confrontation that none of them actually sought, and in fact surprised them all in its duration and its intensity, and led to a long-term war of attrition. What we've seen in this particular case has been an action-reaction dynamic, a spiral in which NATO thought that it was taking prudent defensive steps to secure both the allies in the alliance and the aspirants to NATO alliance membership that we believe should not threaten Russia. And we repeatedly said to the Russians, NATO is a defensive alliance, you have nothing to be concerned about, we have no hostile or aggressive intent toward Russia. And the Russians said, well, wait a minute now. Things that you're doing actually threaten Russian national interests. And we have security concerns here that we have to deal with. Let's work this out. And the Russians, I think, were forceful, both in the diplomatic steps that they were urging, but eventually the coercive steps that they took, which ultimately culminated in this invasion of Ukraine in 2022. But the Russians actually see themselves as fighting a defensive struggle here to prevent Ukraine from being a member of the NATO alliance, to prevent the United States and its NATO allies from putting military facilities and weaponry on Ukrainian soil that the Russians fear would threaten Russia's own security. Now, the way you deal with an escalatory spiral problem is much different than the way you deal with a Nazi Germany. The only way out of that spiral is through diplomatic compromise. It is through talking to one another, understanding the other side's own perceptions of its security interests and the threats that it sees, and finding a way forward that addresses each side's core security concerns. That is what I think the Trump administration is trying to do right now with Russia, with Ukraine. And that's a much different diagnosis of the situation that they're dealing with and a much different prescription for handling the problem than what Zelensky has been urging.